The noise of the New York subway echoes as the camera focuses on the wrinkled face of an elderly Muslim man. His eyes, marked by time, stare at the floor. His trembling hands hold a small folded prayer rug and a Quran worn from constant use. His white kufi, a symbol of devotion and humility, stands out among the hurried crowd of the great American metropolis. "Hey, look at Bin Laden over there," shouts a young man, provoking laughter in the crowded car. "What are you going to blow up today, terrorist grandpa?" adds another, while a third mockingly imitates an Arabic accent. Laughter echoes through the car. Some passengers look away, embarrassed. Others observe the scene with indifference, as if this were just another normal day on public transportation in the city that never sleeps. The elderly man clutches the Quran to his chest. His eyes water, but his face remains serene. He doesn't respond to the provocations. He doesn't raise his voice. He shows no anger. What no one knew was that what seemed like just another common act of Islamophobia would reveal a truth that left everyone speechless. A lesson in humility, faith, and dignity that would transcend the walls of that subway car and touch the hearts of millions of people around the world. His name was Kareem Abdullah, an immigrant who arrived in the United States more than 4 decades ago. On that cold autumn morning, his only goal was to visit his daughter Amira, hospitalized at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center with a delicate case of leukemia. The small rug he carried wasn't to draw attention. It was simply so he could perform his 5 daily prayers, even away from home or the mosque. Born in Cairo, Egypt, Kareem lived most of his adult life on American soil. His children were born here. His grandchildren grew up here. America was his home, just as Egypt had been once. Before continuing with my testimony, I want to ask you who are watching. Check if you're already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know which countries this story is reaching and bringing knowledge about religious tolerance and respect for others. Your comment helps this content reach more people. Let's go back to that morning on the subway. While Kareem tried to remain discreet in a corner of the car, 3 young men in their 20s began pointing in his direction. "Look at his turban," said one of them, confusing the traditional kufi with a turban. "I bet he's hiding a bomb in that bag," whispered another, loud enough for several passengers to hear. "Why don't you go back to your country, terrorist?" shouted the third, encouraged by his friends' laughter. The words cut through the air like sharp knives. Some passengers laughed nervously. Others pretended not to hear, absorbed by their smartphones or pretending to sleep. An older woman looked at Kareem with pity in her eyes, but quickly looked away when he met her gaze. What those young men didn't know was that this man had already marked the history of this country in a way that no one could imagine. Behind that face marked by time and those calloused hands, there was a story of contribution, sacrifice, and love for the United States that few Native Americans could match. The entire car seemed to be waiting for Kareem's reaction, perhaps a cry of indignation, a harsh response, or even tears of humiliation. But none of that happened. Instead of reacting, Kareem simply took a deep breath and continued holding his Quran firmly, like someone clinging to an anchor in the midst of a storm. His lips moved slightly, reciting something no one could hear, perhaps a prayer, perhaps a sacred verse that gave him strength in that moment of trial. A young woman wearing a hijab on the other side of the car lowered her head, visibly disturbed by the scene. A middle-aged man frowned, uncomfortable with the young men's behavior, but remained silent, like almost everyone else. Why didn't he react to such humiliation? What was going through the mind of that elderly man while he was the target of so much ignorance and prejudice? The answer to this question would be much deeper and more surprising than anyone could imagine. Among the passengers was Hannah Kim, a journalism student from Columbia University. Discreetly, she took out her phone and began recording the scene, not to join the spectacle of humiliation, but to document what she considered a repulsive act of religious intolerance. "I'm recording this," Hannah finally said, breaking her silence, "and I'm going to post it so everyone can see how you behave." The young men laughed, unimpressed by the threat. One of them even posed for the camera, as if proud of his actions. That same night, the video was posted on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram with the caption, "Elderly Muslim humiliated on NYC subway today. Nobody did anything to help. Is this America in 2025? Within hours, the video surpassed 1 million views. Outraged comments flooded social media. Hashtags like Respect Muslims and No to Islamophobia began to gain traction. What Hannah didn't know was that within a few hours, that video would reach authorities that no one expected, and would trigger a series of events that would forever change the lives of everyone involved in that seemingly banal episode of everyday prejudice. As the video spread across social media like wildfire, many questions began to emerge. Who was that elderly man? Why was his reaction so restrained? And mainly, why did his patience seem to hide a strength that no one could see? Some internet users began to investigate. Photos of the elderly man were compared with images from public archives. Former employees of the New York Metropolitan Transportation System commented on the posts, expressing outrage, but also leaving clues about the true identity of that man. "I think I know him from somewhere," wrote a former employee of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. "If he's who I'm thinking, these people have no idea who they just insulted." Meanwhile, Kareem Abdullah continued his daily routine. He visited his daughter in the hospital, performed his 5 daily prayers facing Mecca, and tended to his small garden behind his modest home in Queens. Apparently oblivious to the virtual storm forming around him, he remained at peace with himself and his faith. But who really was Kareem Abdullah? What did his past hide? And why would his identity, when finally revealed, leave everyone so surprised? On the morning of the 3rd day after the incident, the New York Times published a special report on the front page. The headline, in bold letters, read, "Humiliated on the subway, the man who saved New York." Below, an archive photo showed a younger Kareem Abdullah receiving a medal from the then mayor of the city. The story quickly spread to other outlets. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all rushed to cover the surprising revelation about the true identity of that elderly Muslim publicly humiliated. Kareem Abdullah wasn't just any immigrant. He was Dr. Kareem Abdullah, a civil engineer graduated from MIT, an expert in urban infrastructure security. During the 1980s, when New York's subway system was deteriorated and prone to accidents, it was Kareem who led an ambitious modernization and structural reinforcement project that, according to experts, prevented dozens of potential disasters. His team was responsible for developing early structural failure detection sensors that were installed throughout the city's subway network. Conservative estimates indicated that his work had potentially saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives over the decades. In 2001, after the September 11th attacks, Kareem returned from the beginning of his retirement to voluntarily lead a team that assessed the structural integrity of subway stations near the World Trade Center. His work was crucial for the safe reopening of these stations in the following months. The one who was called a terrorist was, in fact, the one who had helped protect thousands of lives in that same city that now received him with contempt and intolerance. The irony was palpable, and the shame collective. The revelation about Kareem Abdullah's true identity generated a wave of outrage and solidarity that transcended religious and cultural barriers. On the following Friday, hundreds of people, Muslims and non-Muslims, gathered at the subway station where the incident had occurred. Many carried signs with messages like, "New York supports Kareem" and "Intolerance doesn't represent us." Non-Muslim women wore hijabs in solidarity. Men of different religions wore kufis similar to Kareem's. Religious leaders of various denominations published an open letter condemning the act of Islamophobia and calling for more education about religious diversity in schools and communities. The mayor of the city made an official statement repudiating what had happened and announcing an investigation into the incident. On social media, the hashtag #ThankYouDrKareem became a global trending topic. Former colleagues, people who didn't even know Kareem personally, but had benefited from his work, shared stories and messages of gratitude. The MTA, the authority responsible for metropolitan transportation, announced that it would install commemorative plaques at the stations that had been part of the modernization project led by Kareem in the 1980s. But amid all this commotion and support, a question hung in the air. How did Dr. Kareem himself react to seeing his story exposed? Would he be resentful? Would he seek justice against his aggressors? Or would his reaction be as surprising as his past? After days of media insistence, Kareem Abdullah finally agreed to give an exclusive interview, not out of vanity or desire for fame, but because he felt he had an important message to share. The interview took place in his simple home in Queens, where he had lived alone since his wife passed away 5 years earlier. The room was decorated with family photos, framed certificates, and, in a prominent place, a prayer rug facing Mecca. The journalist began by asking how he felt about being publicly humiliated. "I felt sadness," Kareem replied, with his calm voice and soft accent. Not for myself, but for the young men. Sadness to see that after so many decades in this country that I have learned to love, there is still so much ignorance about Islam. When asked why he didn't react to the provocations, Karim smiled serenely and opened his worn Quran, pointing to a marked verse. Allah is with the patient, 3:200. He recited in Arabic, then translated, "My faith teaches me that patience is not weakness, but strength. The true jihad, which doesn't mean holy war as many think, but rather effort or struggle, is against our own negative inclinations." He explained that in that moment on the subway, he was internally struggling against feelings of anger and humiliation, choosing to respond to them with sabr, the virtuous patience that Islam so values. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught that the strong person is not the one who knocks others down, but the one who controls himself when angry, he explained. Responding to hatred with hatred only multiplies hatred. Someone needs to break this cycle. The simplicity and depth of his words contrasted with the tumult that the case had generated. Amid the collective indignation, Karim offered not only forgiveness, but a lesson in ancestral wisdom that seemed lost in the modern world. The interview with Karim quickly went viral, surpassing even the original video of the humiliation. His message of patience and forgiveness touched millions of people, generating debates about Islamophobia, religious tolerance, and the true meaning of strength and dignity. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority, MTA, issued a formal apology, not just to Karim but to the Muslim community as a whole. It also announced the launch of an educational campaign against Islamophobia, with posters in all subway stations and trains. "Respect travels with us," said the campaign slogan, which featured New Yorkers of different ethnic and religious backgrounds. Schools in the city included the case in their discussions about diversity and respect. Universities invited experts on Islam for lectures open to the public. Mosques held open house events, inviting non-Muslims to learn more about the religion and its culture. The three young men responsible for the humiliation were identified and faced severe public condemnation. Two of them lost their jobs. The third was expelled from the university where he studied. All faced potential prosecution for hate crimes. In the midst of this storm, Karim was invited to a special hearing at City Hall. The objective was to publicly honor him for his contributions to the city and formally apologize to him for what happened. The ceremony would be broadcast live and would have the presence of municipal and state authorities. But what the elderly man asked at this hearing surprised even more than the official apologies and all the commotion that the case had generated. The City Hall room was packed that morning. Reporters, photographers, authorities, and ordinary citizens squeezed in to witness the moment. When Karim Abdullah took the stage, leaning slightly on his cane, he was received with a thunderous standing ovation that lasted several minutes. The mayor gave a long speech praising Karim's contributions to the city, detailing his pioneering work on the subway system, and concluding with a formal apology on behalf of all New Yorkers. He offered him a commemorative plaque and announced that a subway station would be renamed in his honor. When it was Karim's turn to speak, a respectful silence took over the room. With his soft but firm voice, he thanked them for the honors, but then made a request that left everyone perplexed. "I appreciate the honors, but I respectfully decline them," he said, causing whispers of surprise. "I don't want my name put on a station. I don't want compensation or recognition." Instead, Karim asked for three things. First, that the young men who had humiliated him not be criminally prosecuted, as long as they agreed to participate in an educational program about religious diversity. Second, that the money that would be used to rename the station be directed to educational programs about religious tolerance in the city's public schools. Third, and most surprisingly, that he be granted the opportunity to personally meet with his aggressors for a frank dialogue about Islam and his experience as an American Muslim. "You didn't hurt me," he said, looking directly at the cameras, knowing that the young men would probably be watching. "You hurt the respect that unites human beings, and that can only be healed with understanding and dialogue, not with punishment and more division." His words brought tears to many of those present. The mayor, visibly moved, promised to meet all of Karim's requests, recognizing that his wisdom transcended any official response the city could offer. Days later, a private meeting took place between Karim and the three young men. What was said in this meeting remained between them, but everyone came out transformed. The young men, once proud of their attitudes, now seemed deeply reflective. One of them even posted a video apologizing and describing how that meeting had changed his view of Islam and the world. A year has passed since the incident on the New York subway. Kareem Abdullah continues his simple life in Queens, tending to his garden and regularly visiting his daughter, who fortunately recovered from leukemia. He declines invitations for lectures and interviews, preferring the anonymity he always cultivated. Educational programs on religious diversity flourish in city schools. Incidents of Islamophobia have significantly decreased. The meeting between Kareem and his aggressors inspired an award-winning documentary about forgiveness and reconciliation. Kareem's story teaches us that greatness is not in clothes, titles, or social positions. It is not in retaliation or seeking revenge when we are hurt. True greatness lies in patience, compassion, and forgiveness, values that transcend religions and cultures, uniting us in our shared humanity. Islam, so often misunderstood and feared in the West, teaches that true strength is not in dominating others, but in dominating oneself. As the Prophet Muhammad said, the best jihad is to speak a word of truth before a tyrannical ruler, or, we might add, in the face of prejudice and ignorance. Kareem Abdullah's story is a powerful reminder that behind appearances and stereotypes, there is always a human being with a history, with contributions, with dignity, and that often those we judge as different or strange are precisely those who have contributed most to the common good without seeking recognition or applause. If this story touched your heart, share it in your groups and social networks so that more people understand the true face of respect and Islam. Help spread this message of tolerance and understanding in a world increasingly divided by walls of prejudice and ignorance. Because in the end, it doesn't matter if we are Muslims, Christians, Jews, or atheists, Americans, Brazilians, or Egyptians, young or old. What really matters is how we treat each other, how we respond to hatred, and what kind of world we want to build for future generations. As Kareem taught us, the answer is not in shouting louder but in listening more carefully, not in hating more intensely, but in loving more deeply, not in pointing out differences, but in celebrating our shared humanity. And you, what did you learn from this story? How can you apply Kareem's lesson in your own life? Reflect on this and leave your opinion in the comments. Together, we can build a world where respect and understanding prevail over prejudice and ignorance. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell to receive notifications, and share this video with who you believe needs to hear this story of transformation and forgiveness. Until the next video.